Something historic just happened on Russia's turf. Ukraine has hit hard with its drones once again, but this strike is different. On the surface, it looks like yet another of the many long-range attacks that Ukraine has pulled off in Russia. But that's the point. One of the many. What we're really seeing here is the tipping point of the Ukraine war. The power has shifted into Ukraine's hands, as it has all of the momentum combined with the perfect strategy for taking out Russia. Ukraine has built up to this for years. Now it's paying off. And to see how, we take you to Russia's Voronezh Oblast. A Russian region that borders Ukraine's Luhansk and lies near Kyiv Oblast, Voronezh is around 150 kilometers or 93 miles away from the front lines of the war. That makes no difference to Ukraine. It hasn't for a while, as it has been striking targets far deeper than that for several years. But on April 29th, Ukraine hit something special, and it did it via a coordinated effort that took advantage of a strategy that Ukraine put in place months ago. It all started with a Russian rotorcraft. That chopper was on an airstrip in Voronezh along with 3 other helicopters to undergo refueling and complete pre-flight inspections ahead of yet another deployment into Ukrainian territory. The pilots would have done this many times before. Of the 4, at least one was an Mi-28 gunship, with another being an Mi-17 transport chopper. These are the kinds of assets Russia relies on to ship troops into Ukraine and rain down fire on anybody who tries to stop them. April 29th's refueling was meant to be just another pit stop before the helicopter pilots could continue their work. Instead, it became the date when Ukraine pulled off one of its most spectacular strikes of the war so far. As Russia's choppers refueled, Ukrainian drones flew into the sky. Loaded with first-person view cameras, these drones flew the 90-plus miles to Voronezh and zeroed in on the parked helicopters. Russia couldn't do a thing about it. What was supposed to be a safe zone was compromised. Air defenses either failed or weren't there to begin with, and one by one, Ukraine's drones closed the distance and scored direct hits. Video evidence of the strikes has already been shared, gleefully so, by the commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, Robert Brovdy. The hits were inflicted in the rear central part of the engine compartment, bypassing the main propeller blades. As a result of this strike, at least one helicopter maintenance specialist was killed after being hit by the drone. Brovdy shared in a Telegram post announcing the strike. The accompanying video showcases just how accurate Ukraine's drones have become. For Russia, the cost of the attack was immense. It's not just the technician who has been lost. That alone is damaging enough. Russia is quickly running out of people who have any sort of expertise in its military, as it sends tens of thousands of people to die on the front lines rather than training them in support roles. But it's the choppers that Russia will miss the most. It has since been speculated that Ukraine managed to take out an Mi-8 along with the other helicopters we mentioned earlier. This chopper is a multi-role craft that can transport troops along with providing fire support to ground units. It being downed means that Russia has lost about $6 million to a Ukrainian drone that likely costs less than a tenth of that amount. The Mi-8 taken out by the same types of long-range FPV drones cost Russia around 3 times as much to build. Add $18 million to $6 million and you get a $24 million day for Ukraine. More than that, actually. The Mi-17 that Ukraine took out cost as much as $32 million, according to Aircraft 24. It's not clear if that's Russia's cost to build or its export price. But even if we assume half that amount for Russia to build the chopper for its own use, that's another expensive piece of equipment shattered by Ukraine's flying sanctions. Frankly, Russia should be used to these kinds of losses by now. Its choppers haven't fared well against Ukraine. Russian choppers have been blown up on the ground by Ukrainian partisan groups, as we saw when an Mi-28N was taken out in a training center in the Tver Oblast back in August 2025. They've also been taken out in mid-flight, as we saw in September when Ukrainian drones downed an Mi-8 while it was in the air in a sort of attack that is so rare that Russia could never have seen it coming. So far, Russia has lost 352 of its helicopters since Putin launched his invasion, per Ukraine's Ministry of Finance. But this time, something is different. Here is where we are seeing things shift in Ukraine's favor, as a tipping point has been reached. Before we get into that, it's worth highlighting the sheer level of coordination that allowed Ukraine to pull off this most recent strike. This was no one-off strike carried out by a single Ukrainian unit. It took planning. For a start, Ukraine's intelligence services had to be involved. You don't just launch drones at an airstrip almost 100 miles away, hoping that there just so happens to be something of value to strike. Ukraine's drone units would have known exactly what Russia's refueling choppers were doing, and they sent their weapons into the sky so they would arrive at the perfect moment to strike. There's nothing a helicopter can do to stop a drone when it's grounded and being refueled. Ukraine knew what it was going to do well ahead of time, and when the moment was right to launch its operation, Ukraine didn't do anything by halves. 3 of its units were involved in the attack on Voronezh, including the 429th Separate Brigade, which has become known as the Achilles Brigade in Ukraine, the 43rd Separate Artillery Brigade, and the unit that is so often behind Ukraine's most impressive drone strikes, the Alpha Unit of the Security Service of Ukraine. It seems pretty clear that the Alpha Unit handled the actual drone strikes. As for the other 2 units, it's difficult to say. Brovny revealed that they took part, but he didn't say how. That's smart. Why tell Russia how Ukraine is pulling off its drone strikes? Putin's patsies don't need any clues about how they could prevent another attack like this from happening in the future. But right now, Ukraine's coordination isn't what Putin will be worried about. It's not even the loss of choppers and both the degradation of Russia's military and the monetary cost that comes with them that will have Russia's president shaking in his boots. Putin's real problem now is what this latest attack represents. Ukraine didn't get lucky in Voronezh. It's executed an attack made possible by the systematic destruction of the one thing that has been keeping Russia safe from Ukraine's drones and long-range weapons since the beginning of the war. That changes everything. And by the way, if this is the kind of insight you want to see more of, make sure you are subscribed to The Military Show. We break it down like this every single week. What Ukraine pulled off on April 29th and so much of what it's doing against Russia right now has been made possible because of a consistent campaign that has focused on the degradation of Russia's air defenses. Now, the evidence that this campaign has worked is starting to come. Russia was never as effective at protecting its skies as it would have wanted. It simply isn't possible to protect everything. Russia is the world's largest country with a total area of 17 million square kilometers, or around 6.5 million square miles. Russia could build nothing but air defenses and still be unable to protect all of its territory. Add in the fact that it has to send huge numbers of air defense systems into occupied Ukraine to protect against strikes in the near rear, and you get the inevitable. Russia's air defenses were already stretched. Ukraine has been making that problem so much worse that Russia no longer has the systems it needs to protect some of its most high-value targets. The Voronezh strike is just one of many that Ukraine is pulling off all over Russia and the occupied territories. We only need to look at the last couple of days before the creation of this video to see many other examples. On May 1st, the news broke that Ukraine's drones had managed to strike an airfield that is over 1,700 kilometers, or a little over 1,050 miles away from the front lines. The Shagol Air Base in Chelyabinsk was hit with drones that struck a pair of Russia's ultra-modern Su-57 fighter jets, along with an Su-34 and another aircraft that hasn't been specified. This was among the deepest strikes that Ukraine has ever pulled off, and it's cost Russia some of its best fighter jets, along with up to around $250 million. On the same day, Le Monde reported that Ukraine's drones had also managed to reach a major oil refinery in Perm, which is 1,500 kilometers or around 930 miles away from Ukraine. This strike is part of another of Ukraine's campaigns, which is to prevent Russia from profiting from its crude oil and refined oil products. It's all about the degradation of Putin's war machine. And that happens when you combine strikes against assets that cost Russia money to make and attacks against the financial lifelines that would enable Russia to make more. Fast forward to May 3rd, and the regional governor of the Leningrad Oblast, Alexander Drozdenko, was reporting that Ukraine had launched yet another drone strike against Russia's Baltic Sea oil terminal in Primorsk. Russia claims to have shot down 60 drones targeting the export terminal, which is able to handle up to 1 million barrels per day, according to Al Jazeera. But Ukraine said it hit facilities, along with a warship, patrol boat, and shadow tanker. Primorsk has been a repeated target for Ukraine for much of April and now into May. The same can be said of Tuapse. On May 1st, Ukraine's drones struck the Tuapse oil refinery, which is in the Krasnodar Krai region of Russia, and this most recent attack is the 4th in about a month. That sort of repetition shouldn't be happening. Even if Russia made the mistake of not protecting its vital oil facilities, one successful Ukrainian strike should be enough to force Putin's hand into sending more air defenses, but that isn't happening. Ukraine is clearly establishing safe aerial corridors that allow it to send its drones deep into Russia, where they strike all over the country. But Putin's bigger problem is that these corridors aren't being closed once a strike occurs. They remain open for Ukraine to use again and again. And when Ukraine's drones reach places like Primorsk and Tuapse, where they have struck before, they're finding that Russia hasn't installed any new air defenses to stop them. Bear in mind that all of the Ukrainian drone strikes we just discussed happened in the space of 3 days. The attack against Russia's choppers in Voronezh happened just before. What we're seeing here is a clear sign of Russian weakness that is allowing Ukraine to seize a massive upper hand in the war. For years, Putin has been able to protect most of Russia's most valuable assets, mostly because Ukraine didn't have the long-range capabilities needed to go after them hard. Stretched air defenses were enough for the first few years of the war. In 2025, Ukraine started intensifying its strikes, as we saw with its campaign against Russian oil refineries that often saw it hit the same refinery several times over the course of months. By the end of 2025, Ukraine had hit Russian oil infrastructure over 140 times, which was more than a 50% increase over 2024. But the key to all of this is Ukraine's attacks against Russia's air defenses. Already stretched, those defenses are now depleted. There are now gaps in Russia's air defense network. Gaps always existed, of course, but those gaps are staying open longer than ever and in some cases simply never being filled. This isn't negligence by Putin, it's necessity. Russia no longer has air defenses to spare, so Putin is being forced to pick and choose what to protect. Ukraine has been turning the air defense screw for months to create this situation. According to the Kyiv Independent, Ukraine conducted 492 strikes against Russian air defenses inside Russia and the occupied territories between June 2025 and March 2026. That number accounts for almost a third of all Ukraine's verified long and medium-range strikes during this period. Systematic destruction of Russian air defenses was the name of the game, and Ukraine hasn't just stopped because it's reached the tipping point of a long-range war. That's the thing about a tipping point. It's the critical moment before everything changes, and Ukraine is now focused on forcing that change. On May 1st, Ukraine's Ministry of Defense announced that 25 Russian air defense and radar systems were taken out in April due to Ukraine's middle-range strikes. That's almost a system per day, and all will need to be replaced by air defenses that were either elsewhere in Ukraine or inside Russia if Putin hopes to keep hold of that territory that his troops have snatched. Russia is also struggling with stockpile issues. The commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces, Alexander Syrsky, said toward the end of April that Russia doesn't have enough air defense missiles to counter Ukraine's drones. Degradation is leading to devastation. And it's not like Russia is going to be able to build new air defense systems and radars quickly enough to replace what it's lost. If it could do that, Russia wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. Of course, none of this would mean anything if Ukraine weren't capitalizing on Russia's air defense degradation with its long and middle-range drone strikes. But Ukraine has capitalized. It's accompanied its ruining of Russia's air defenses with constant strikes that are made possible by a relentless pursuit of building better and stronger weapons that can be used to hit high-value targets inside Russia. The FP9 is one of those weapons. Made by Firepoint, the FP9 is a ballistic missile that can strike as deep as Moscow and is larger than Russia's own Iskander ballistic missiles. Ukraine was never supposed to be able to build a weapon like this. Putin thought the country would collapse long before, but Ukraine has the FP9 on the way, and Ukraine has already laid the groundwork for that missile to absolutely obliterate whatever it chooses to target inside Russia. A year of taking out defenses amounted to setting up the pins. The FP9, along with Ukraine's long-range drones, will be knocking those pins down. Along with the improved quality of its long-range arsenal, Ukraine is building in vast quantities. On April 30th, ABC News reported that Russia had broken its own record for launching missiles and drones into Ukraine. A staggering 6,804 of Russia's projectiles entered Ukrainian territory, per Ukraine's Air Force, which broke Russia's previous record of 6,600 set in March. You may be wondering why we're telling you about Russia's monthly drone and missile numbers when we're talking about Ukraine's quantities. There's a simple answer to that. Neither of Russia's recent record-breaking months surpasses what Ukraine did in March. Russia revealed itself. Its defense ministry said that Ukraine fired 7,347 drones into Russia, which is the highest monthly total reported for either country and amounts to an average of 237 projectiles per day. Ukraine has blown past Russia in one of the key areas of the war, and it's doing it now because it's worked for months to cripple the air defenses that could stop its drones. Now that those defenses are so scattered and broken that Ukraine can almost strike at will, it's willing to send record-breaking swarms into Russia that will soon be accompanied by ballistic missiles like the FP9. Oh, and if you're wondering if Ukraine beat Russia on the long-range drone numbers front again in April, we don't know. Russia's defense ministry has suddenly gone very quiet about Ukraine's attacks. That isn't surprising. The ministry revealed more than it should have in March, and it doesn't want to come out again and say that Ukraine is beating it in the long-range game, but it doesn't need to. The evidence is there for all to see in the destroyed helicopters in Voronezh, the burning oil in Tuapse and Primorsk, and the shattered fighter jets on a Russian airfield that is over 900 miles away from Ukraine. Russia simply can't protect its most valuable assets anymore, be they in the occupied territories or on its own turf. All Ukraine has to do now is continue to apply the pressure. Every air defense system that it takes out degrades Russia just a little bit more. This is the death of a defense by 1,000 cuts being played out in real time. And it's happening because Russia's air defenses have proven themselves to be useless at protecting themselves against Ukraine's newest generation of drones. In essence, Ukraine isn't doing anything new. This is a classic air defense suppression strategy, only it's taken years to implement because Ukraine has had to build the weapons it needed to make it happen while it was being bombarded by Russia. Now Ukraine has those weapons. It doesn't have to worry about seeking permission or about Russia's targets being out of range anymore. What Ukraine wants to hit is what it will inevitably take out, and that is why the power has shifted. Russia's air defenses will continue to fall apart. More strikes like those we've talked about will happen as Ukraine's drone swarms grow larger and it introduces its ballistic missiles into the field. Putin never saw any of this coming, and now he can't see a way to stop it. A healthy dose of salt has been rubbed into the Russian wounds. As Ukraine becomes more effective at long-range strikes than ever before, it's also found a way to make one of the most important weapons in Russia's arsenal functionally useless. The glide bombs are being neutralized, and they're turned into ineffective scrap inside Ukraine. Another major shift is happening, and you can find out more by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to The Military Show to keep up with the latest developments in the Ukraine war. And thank you, as always, for watching.